Welcome to Bankruptcy, Through the Looking Glass, with Barry Levine.
Hello and welcome to Through the Looking Glass with Barry Levine. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today we're diving into foreclosure solutions with Barry. He's going to give us a lot of information as far as whether you're facing the threat of foreclosure or struggling with mortgage payments. Today's episode is packed with essential strategies and legal insights to help you navigate these tough times. Barry, so good to see you again. It's been a minute.
Always glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to get some insight from you on this one. So let's start with this.
Sure.
What are the key steps homeowners should take when they first realize that they might be facing a foreclosure?
You know, there's really not a lot you can do. It's something that happens organically. You know, you find that the first thing is you miss one payment, then you miss two payments, and then of course banks being banks, unless you can walk in with every penny that you owe them, won't accept a partial payment, and then the next thing you know, you're 8 or 9 payments in arrears, and it becomes a problem. But it's really, you know, how does it happen or when does it happen? I mean, to me, it just happens. I mean, you know, there are people out there that, you know, from a bankruptcy strategy point of view, you could maybe create mortgage arrears so you don't have to file a Chapter 13, but that's just the cynic in me talking.
What do you feel like are some misconceptions out there in the world when it comes to foreclosures?
Well, I think the greatest thing is that, you know, nobody can go on your property. You know, when a foreclosure takes place, they can line up outside. They can't set foot in your driveway or anything like that. The other thing is that I find that lots of people seem to think that mortgages can occur overnight. And, you know, living in what remains of America, whatever you may think, we still have certain rights and obligations that may have to be complied with. And more foreclosures, you know, when I have somebody come in and say, well, my house is being foreclosed on tomorrow. Of course, when we stop laughing, it doesn't happen like that. You know, there are notices every step of the way. You know, of course, and I think I've mentioned before, the typical ostrich client who figures that if I ignore the certified mails, they're going to go away. You know, that only works. You know, that maybe is how it happens that the mortgage is being scheduled tomorrow, the foreclosure. But, you know, there's a certain process that everybody has to follow. You know, the other thing that people don't seem to realize is, you know, post-foreclosure. I mean, sometimes things are not meant to be. You know, if you have no income and there's no equity in the house and there's no way to, you know, the arrears must be paid at some point in time along with the current mortgage, you know, that once a foreclosure takes place, you don't have to leave the house. You know, somebody has to evict you. Granted, you don't have much of a standing to stop an eviction. You're what's called a tenant at sufferance. But at least it's a process that people have to go through. And as in every legal process that someone encounters, it can be, for lack of a better word, jerked around. So, you know, eventually you have to move out, but, you know, it's not necessarily the end of the world.
How do you assess a client's situation when they come to you to prevent the foreclosure, and what solutions are you able to come up with?
You know, I've been doing this it's now over 44 years, and you may see the ads about foreclosure defense and all this other mishigas. The only thing that stops a foreclosure is a bankruptcy. You know, to leave it to, you know, in Massachusetts, again, I talk about it, to leave it to a land court judge or a superior court judge to go in and look to enjoin a foreclosure because when they granted the mortgage, they forgot to dot the I or cross the T. You know, at least when you file a bankruptcy, you know, unless, of course, it's your third or fourth bankruptcy filing of like a Chapter 13, but we can talk about that some other time. You know, the automatic stay goes into effect and the mortgage is stopped in its tracks. I mean, the foreclosure, excuse me, it is Monday morning. But, you know, to me, that's the only strategy really, from my perspective. I don't get involved in mortgage modifications. If you know from, what's that story, Sisyphus rolling the rock up the hill and it keeps going back, That's like doing a mortgage modification. The word we get from clients is they file all the documents 12 times and 11 times they've lost them. And when they find them on the 12th time, they're dated because they were dated 3 months ago. It's a fruitless endeavor. Interestingly enough, I've had a number of cases where people have pre-bankruptcy sought out mortgage modifications, and when they rejected, no way, don't talk to us, all this other mishigas. When they file a bankruptcy, suddenly the bank changes its tunes and decides to do a mortgage modification, which to me makes absolutely no sense. What changed? The financial situation is the same. Nothing's changed about the house or the mortgage, but that's how banks are.
Yeah. And where do you think the misconceptions we're talking about, where do they come from? Because you see these commercials all the time with all these options for foreclosures and bankruptcies and all that. I mean, is that kind of filling our heads full of BS, for lack of a better term?
Well, I mean, you said it, not me. The problem is that, especially people, when they come to me and they heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend, and this is how it works, and this is how they did it. It's mostly bullshit. You're absolutely right. I mean, maybe if you're in a position of, it's like very often, it happens all the time around here. If a foreclosure is scheduled, and yes, people don't want to file a bankruptcy for whatever reason, the banks are very nice and they'll extend the foreclosure if you pay them some money. Money that usually never sees the light of day on the loan. It's just the privilege of continuing the foreclosure.
Right.
But they're really, if you don't have money, there's really nothing you can do. The bankruptcy at least gives you, be it a Chapter 13, if you're trying to save your house, or a Chapter 7, it gives you some breathing space where, nothing is happening immediately. Whatever is going to happen now needs the approval of the bankruptcy court. And yeah, some of the judges are consumer friendly and some of the judges are bank friendly, but that's the luck of the draw. But at least you have somebody who's more experienced in dealing with these things and can be more in touch with reality, than some banker.
Bankruptcy obviously is a dirty word on a lot of people's minds. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to think about it. It feels negative, but it really, like you've been saying, it's really the only option for a lot of people. Can you kind of explain what happens once you decide, okay, I'm going to go ahead and file for bankruptcy, and how that, I don't want to say fixes your problem, but gets you on the right track?
Well, what it does is, once you file that bankruptcy, the foreclosure is stayed. Any other actions that somebody's taking against you are automatically stayed. And it gives you some breathing space to assess your situation and work from there. Very often, listen, if you're not working, or if, the mortgages you have on your house is such that you needed a certain income level to pay them and you're not making that anymore, you may have to consider selling the house.
Mm-hmm.
If there's equity in the house, you go through a bankruptcy and then you can sell the house and, get to keep all the money, especially in Massachusetts where the homestead exemption's $500,000.
And people are like I was saying, people are scared of bankruptcy. It's a word that no one wants to hear.
Only hurts for a second.
Only for a second. Are people unnecessarily afraid of it? Obviously you don't want to do it if you don't have to do it. I look at it as a business decision. You can either be an indentured servant to your creditors, or you can start fresh, and you'd be surprised, people who have homes and people who are financing cars who keep them through a bankruptcy and continue to make the payments. Those situations work for you going forward. And by the same token, creditors, if you're making a decent living, look at you post-discharge as a good credit risk, because you can't file a bankruptcy again for 8 years. So they're willing to give you a small line of credit, a credit card, and see how it goes. There are some banks, I know that some banks around here offer you collateralized credit cards or collateralized CD loans, and that's one way to go about, creating your good credit score post-bankruptcy, because now,
they give you a loan, it's secured by your money, but you make the payments, it reflects well on your credit score. But if you don't make the payments, they take your money. It's very, I just discovered actually that Amazon allows you to do that very easily, set it up for yourself. I was just screwing around, and it's like, yes, you can set up a credit card, a collateralized credit card with Amazon.
Oh, is that like the buy now, pay later thing, or is that different?
I think that's different. This one, they offer you 5% off your Amazon purchases.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
I see you're running to get Amazon now.
Amazon, not a sponsor, just so everybody knows.
Yeah. No.
So how much truth is there to like the whole idea that, 7 years, you can't really get a loan, you can't do this? I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that talks about all the negatives of filing for bankruptcy. Is there a lot of misinformation on there when it comes to that?
There too, you have to work at it. Really depends on, the debt that you've sort of gotten rid of in your bankruptcy. If you screwed around $200,000 worth of credit card debt, it may be a little more difficult. But most people nowadays are, not profligate spenders like they used to be. I mean, they're just people who are up against it. They don't have a lot of debt, and they'll find that going forward, it's not the end of the world. Able to get new credit, finance a car, even refinance a mortgage or take out a mortgage. The one thing that may not occur is they may not get the, if a bank has an A credit rating, the fact of the bankruptcy may not get them that A interest rate. I meant, you may get a higher interest rate. It really isn't the end of the world.
Talk about debt consolidation that we see on television commercials all the time. Is that a viable option, or is that a scam, Barry?
Have you seen my other podcast about it? It's an absolute waste of time. I don't think a week goes by where we don't have someone who comes into the office saying, I've been paying these people $400 a month for the last 8 months. They haven't settled any of my claims. In fact, somebody's taking me to court now, and they decide to file a bankruptcy. And the interesting thing about the whole situation is, of course, you've seen the ads. I've mentioned that before. If you're left-handed and only have your right leg, we have a special debt consolidation program for you. Call us today. But the thing is, they don't. The worst part about it is they convince you to allow them to take their monthly fee payments out of your bank account automatically. And sometimes it's next to impossible to stop those payments. So very often clients have to close bank accounts, or if they use a credit card, close the credit account and get another one. It's very interesting, but they're generally a waste of time. Because like I say, if you have like $50,000 or $35,000 worth of debt and they settle $5,000, what have they really done for you?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, like at what point, do you feel people should come talk to you? Is it like at what point do you find that people, because I'm guessing people generally come to you too late or later than they should. Is that fair?
They usually come to me when they have no more money.
And is that the right time?
Well, no, the thing is, not that anybody plans for it, but there are certain things, you can do, to try to make yourself judgment proof, or there's nothing for your creditors to get, but if you wait until the last minute, most of those things, when you file a bankruptcy, you'd have to disclose them, and they'd be considered fraudulent conveyances or something like that, from a civil point of view, not a criminal point of view.
Right.
And, why go through it, if you can do it right, several years in advance. But again, nobody, I'm an inveterate cynic, but nobody, contemplates that they're ever going to have to file a bankruptcy. It's like people set up a corporation, and they set up their closely held corporation, and when they say, how many shares do you want? I want 100,000. It's like they could get something for them, 100,000 shares. They could wipe their tuchus with it. I find that more and more I'm saying to people, it is what it is. I mean, you can't, I've had several cases where, they're high income earners, and they're in Chapter 13s because they have a high income, and they're paying 75% to their creditors. It makes me nauseous, but it is what it is. They make a lot of money. So, and life goes on.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Through the Looking Glass with Barry Levine. To connect with Barry, head to levineslaw.com, and please like and subscribe to our channel and leave us a review. Barry, it's always great to chat with you. Thanks so much for being here.
Same here. Have a good one.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.